So the first trailer for HBO's Lanterns came out a bit ago, and it's kind of been a shit show ever since. You get fan backlash with pretty much every trailer, but when it's this strong, it doesn't often bode well for an adaptation's success. Between complaints about Hal Jordan's age, the cheap-looking budget, the wannabe True Detective look, the edgy as fuck swearing, the underwhelming suit reveal, and the complete lack of any aliens, energy constructs, or the fucking color green, many fans have been voicing their complaints online. When we got our first image for Lanterns, which was just two fucking guys walking with no clear visual indicator that this was even a Green Lantern show, I was skeptical as hell about this thing. But I withheld my judgment until we got a trailer. But once I finally watched it, I have to say, I completely agree with all the backlash, with pretty much everything I was worried about in that first picture being confirmed in the trailer. But there's something else I see within the marketing that we've gotten so far. A small, very small glimmer of blue in the darkness. A blue that we'll call hope. Because despite all the obvious red flags, there are some green flags that I see that this show might actually be alright. Or at least not as bad as fans are rightfully worried it'll be. With the first green flag being the one I think is the most important. Each one of the Green Lanterns we've seen actually seems like the character they're supposed to be. There's been a huge epidemic of skin suit superhero adaptations recently, where show and movie writers grab up a character from the comics, scoop out the personality they've had for decades, and replace it with some entirely new character. So they can advertise this as being a comic adaptation, while really, besides the costume, it's an original fucking character. With James Gunn being incredibly guilty of this. With characters like Frankenstein, Vigilante, Judo Master, Engineer, Crypto, fucking Khan Gorilla, and more, sharing virtually no similarities to the comics version besides their costume or powers. But from what we've seen, that's likely not going to be the case with the Green Lanterns. Guy Gardner has already been portrayed as an obnoxious and abrasive but heroic shit-kicker in Superman. From what little we've seen of the Lanterns trailer, Hal Jordan seems like a devil-may-care, cocky, hotshot maverick who makes his own rules. And John Stewart seems like a serious and stoic but sensitive guy with a hint of arrogance. Obviously, the green and the awesome powers is an important part of the character of Green Lantern, and it's very reasonable to be annoyed that that was not showcased front and center in the marketing. But if I have to choose between the characters actually acting like the characters, but clearly being on a bare bones TV budget, or getting to see them on a huge ass movie budget, but being entirely new characters, that choice is easy. Hal, John, and Guy are three of the best and most fleshed out heroes in the entire DC universe. In an adaptation, when the characters seem like they're gonna, act like the characters, it's always a good sign that at least someone gave a shit about this thing. Whether that giving a shit will extend to the writing and plot of the show, I can't yet say. But at least someone cared enough to do the most basic amount of research onto what these guys are like. And it gives me hope that maybe, if we actually get to see Sinestro, Carol, or Kilowog in this thing, they'll actually act even remotely similar to their characters as well. Likely not, and it's likely that as the show goes on, we'll quickly see that these two share nothing in common with the comic versions, and the trailer is a blatant lie. And no matter what their personalities are, one of the biggest changes that's pissing people off, rightfully so, is the age difference between John and Hal. Though in a way, this is kind of a green flag as well, with green flag 2 being 3 of the 4 corpsmen right out the gate. Many of you may have forgotten or just never known, but not that long ago before this version of Lanterns, there were plans for a different Green Lantern show that would take place across 3 different eras, with each era starring its own Green Lanterns. In the 40s, we'd follow Alan Scott. In the 80s, we'd follow Guy Gardner and some original chick made up for the show. And in the modern day, we'd follow Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz. No Hal, no John. And instead of even giving us Kyle, they were going to make up some lame show original chick? Who the fuck was that show for? I love Alan Scott. I love Guy Gardner. And I quite like Simon and Jessica. But this is a very random-ass pitch for a Green Lantern show. But with the DCU version we have now, almost right out of the gate, we've already got Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, and John Stewart. And though I would prefer they were all around the same age instead of Hal and John being decades apart, I can accept it. For one, it makes sense within the established continuity. Gardner in Superman was already visibly older than the other heroes. Whether I agree or disagree with this change, I disagree by the way, I cannot blame Lanterns for casting an older Hal Jordan to match. I'm alright with John being younger than Hal. But I would hate it if Guy Gardner was a couple decades Hal Jordan senior. In comics, when the Ring scanned the Earth to see who had the willpower and ability to overcome great fear needed to replace a dying Abin Sur, it found two potential candidates, Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner. But since Hal was a little closer, it went to him, with Guy getting a ring years later. This has always led to Guy having a chip on his shoulder and a rivalry with Hal that would be completely lost if Guy Gardner had been an Earth Green Lantern decades before Hal Jordan. So Lanterns is just following the continuity James Gunn established already in Superman, and I would be a hypocritical asshole to criticize this show for Hal's age while not complaining too much about Superman. But there's another reason the age difference can actually work. It's a good excuse to spam the audience with Earth Lanterns immediately. One of the hardest parts of adapting Green Lantern is that all of the Earth Lanterns are fucking popular. In the comics, there are only supposed to be 2 lanterns in each space sector. But due to all kinds of convoluted reasons established across decades of comics, we currently have 7 human lanterns, all operating at the same time. This makes perfect sense, mostly, to comic fans because we've had years to get to know these characters and understand the continuity of why it makes at least a modicum of sense for there to be so many. But you can't do that right off the bat in a show or movie focused on Green Lantern lore. It's too fucking much to toss at the audience at once. You can introduce 1 or 2, but more than that, and the Ring loses its uniqueness. But with this age difference, it's a good excuse to start us off with 3 immediately. Hal and Guy were the Green Lanterns of Earth, and now we have a story where it's time to pass it off to the next generation, starting with John. And you can get John in without just having to skip Hal or Guy. But most importantly, choosing these 3 as our first Green Lanterns shows us that in this universe, fan expectation is the guiding light for which lanterns we're showcasing first, not some weird-ass checklist bullshit no comic fan cares about. I like Simon and Jessica, but I can guarantee it wasn't their characters that made the show want to feature them as main characters in the modern day. And from what we learned from press releases, it was pretty apparent that the thing they were most excited to portray about Alan Scott wasn't the decades of continuity he's had since the 40s. It was something that they forced onto him within the last decade. Guy Gardner was supposed to represent hypermasculinity and patriotism because of course he was, and I'll give you one guess what his made-up partner in that show is going to look like. Hal, Guy, and John are the most popular Green Lanterns, and they were the first 3 of the modern version of the mantle. They just looked at the comics and grabbed up the 3 characters who would make the most fucking sense to adapt first. They didn't shove in Kyle, Jessica, Simon, or God forbid, Joe, making me hopeful that maybe Kyle will appear someday, and we can get the 4 frickin' Corpsmen on screen in live action all together, which regardless of any age changes, would be fucking awesome. Though I doubt it, because many people are pretty sure Hal's gonna die or turn evil due to the show's dark, edgy tone. Which actually, surprisingly, leads me to my 3rd green flag. Lantern seems very different than the rest of the DCU. One of the main things that makes shared universes so interesting is smashing completely different styles of story and character together, even though they really shouldn't fit, and calling it a universe. This is some of the magic of early DC comics, when the incredibly different styles of the Spectre, Hawkman, Green Lantern, Johnny Quick, Ma Uncle Flash, Superman, Batman, and more started crossing over and built something much more unique than any one of them alone. In the early MCU, they did this very well, smashing the grounded world of Iron Man with the fantastical magic world of Thor and the campy superhero world of Captain America. And what came out in Avengers and beyond was an awesome mix that set this machine in motion for a decade. But the modern MCU has become pretty consistent. The same kind of colors, the same types of costumes, the same stories, tones, jokes, and archetypes. Even when they try to make things seem different from each other, the world has become very unified with a house style that makes the prospects of these characters crossing over a lot less exciting. And so far, that's also what the DCU has been. Everything is James Gunn's unique style, because everything so far has been made by him. Sure, Peacemaker swears more than Superman, the creature commandos are more violent than Superman, but I easily believe that all of this exists in the same universe. Everyone talks more or less the same, they each tell the same kind of cartoony but metaphorical for our reality stories, they each have the same kinds of bright but gritty colors. Am I that excited to see Peacemaker, Superman, and the Bride share the screen? Not really, because I feel like I can easily imagine what that would be like. There's no question that all these movies are canon with each other. But Lanterns looks and feels absolutely nothing like Superman or Peacemaker. It's hard to believe this dreary, depressing-looking, dark-grounded show is even supposed to be canon with Gunn's bright, zany DC universe. Guy Gardner meeting Peacemaker wasn't that strange. The two characters feel like they're written by the same guy to live in the same world. But imagining this version of Hal knowing this version of Guy is much more interesting to me. What will the different styles of each character and show bring out in the other characters? How will appearing in different styles change and influence Guy after appearing in Lanterns? John when he appears in Superman? This I'm interested to see. The main thing all failed shared universes get wrong immediately is that these things aren't supposed to all feel the same. That's boring as hell to the audience. But taking drastically different creative visions and smashing them together is a cheap, easy, and interesting way to world build something that no one person alone would think of. And in comics, that has led to some of the most interesting and unique shared worlds we've ever seen. Now, do I personally want a dark, dreary Green Lantern show? Fuck no. Would I prefer a more colorful and optimistic show instead? Dear fuck yes. But we've only gotten one movie and 2 shows out of this universe so far, and they've all looked and felt exactly the fucking same. I don't hate the current style of the DCU, but I will soon if we don't get something fresh to keep it interesting. And if Lanterns can offer that next ingredient to turn this from a gunverse into something more unique, I will be all for it, as long as the writing is good. Which leads me to my next green flag, which was likely the one most people will disagree with. Whether the show is good or bad, I think it'll at least be interesting. Tom King and Damon Lindelof are 2 of the most divisive names you could possibly have on this project. Tom King is fixated on deconstructing every superhero possible in some kind of bizarre public therapy session he's forcing us all to watch him undergo. And we've already seen how he'd use both Hal and Guy in some of the worst misunderstandings of the character that I've ever seen. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the guy, but a lot of people are. While comics are stagnating, his limited runs often sell quite well. There's some kind of magic about what he writes that appeals to a wide range of people. Whether it's the ironic juxtaposition of bright, colorful, optimistic costumes with his nihilistic, cynical, and depressed outlook on life, or the sense that he's discovering and tearing apart these characters alongside a new reader, I can't say for sure. But I can say that he's carved out a place for himself within the comic world, whether I'm a fan of him or not. And if you're trying to market these characters to a wider audience, even if I disagree with every fiber of my being, on paper, it makes sense to bring in this dude who has been successful at bringing non-comic readers into the medium. And even though I don't even like his work, I keep reading it, as there's something captivating about the way he butchers characters to tell stories that they were never designed to tell, that just, I don't know, it tickles my brain in some unique way. We've had an epidemic of slop recently when it comes to superheroes, and for all his faults, Tom King does not do slop. Deadly poison maybe, but not slop. And for Damon Lindelof, I can never say a bad word about the guy, because he's responsible for one of my favorite shows of all time, Lost. But since then, specifically when it comes to working on established IPs like Star Trek, Alien, and Watchmen, he's made some, let's say, questionable decisions, to put it lightly. You set up this random John Harrington guy who looks nothing like Khan Union Singh as the villain, only to reveal that, oh my god, this guy who looks nothing like Khan Union Singh is actually Khan Union Singh. What the fuck are you talking about? Who in God's name would be excited by that? You're telling me that the chain of events that led to the creation of xenomorphs as we know them was due to some absolute dipshits taking off their helmets and touching at random shit on an alien planet? And you're surprised that people did not take that well? And you try to assure fans that you're not going to disrespect the comic when making your Watchmen sequel, and even write a letter to Alan Moore trying to get his approval on this series, but then also have the fucking audacity to write in some fanfiction retcon that hooded Justice of all characters wore fucking whiteface under his costume? Why? To tie into the racial history of America plot you hijacked the original comic for, in order to try to make some kind of non-committal commentary on the already dated hot-button issues of the time the show came out in? All 3 of those projects were filled with some of the strangest choices I've ever seen, which also did make them kind of interesting. Did I like watching these franchises get hijacked and raped to tell the random stories we got out of them? Not really. Do I regret watching them? Hell no. Into Darkness may be some of the worst writing I've ever seen in my entire life, but it's my definitive guilty pleasure. And inside of all the stupidity, nonsense, and failed nostalgic pandering, there's an almost interesting story about the thin line between self-defense and militarism Starfleet is pushed to try to stay on the right side of when faced against the violent expansionist Klingon Empire and the superhumans of the gene wars of Earth's past. Had they explained that the reckless stupidity of the crew in Prometheus was due to these so-called experts being recruited for their ability to disappear without anyone asking questions instead of their actual scientific expertise, there'd be a lot less criticism of this movie. And beyond that, we've almost got an incredibly interesting story of man's self-interested search for God, and God's horror at man's scientific evolution growing to match his hubris. And Watchmen, though completely misunderstanding and bastardizing the themes of the original, has a fairly interesting story about how heroes, myths, and symbols are stolen and appropriated to justify modern causes, and topically explores an America governed by an increasingly controlling government leaning towards one side of the political aisle, and the manipulation of the backlash from the other side by nihilistic individuals who just want to steal power for themselves. All of these projects are interesting, even if they're all confused, disjointed, divisive, and sometimes downright fucking stupid messes. And though I'd prefer all of them were more good, we've had an epidemic of what the internet has taken to calling slop when it comes to adaptations recently. And if I've got to watch mindless, safe, and sanitized garbage written for no other reason than to appeal to the lowest common denominator, or disjointed, reckless, bizarre nonsense that openly misunderstands the source material, but at least tries to tell a genuine story, awkwardly jabbing at the shared soul of culture and humanity, I'm picking the latter every time. Because they're both gonna suck ass, but at least I have the potential to gain a thought from the second one, even if the writers didn't intend it. But more important than all of that mumbo-jumbo, there are a lot of people very worried that the show is going to reveal that Hal Jordan is infected by parallax and is the secret main villain of the series. But with Damon Lindelof, I don't believe that. His entire shtick since Lost is that whatever you expect, he'll do something completely different. Not even subverting your expectations, since that's something people see as coming nowadays. Just jutting off in some totally random direction you could never possibly see coming. If he's hired to do a Green Lantern show about Hal passing the mantle to John, making Hal secretly parallax is the most vanilla, basic bitch, bare-bones bullshit someone could possibly do. Therefore, I don't expect it. There's a million other ways they could fuck up Hal, but I don't think he'll be parallax. And even if he is, I doubt he's going to be the show's villain. So there you go. 4 green-ish flags for Green Lantern. What do you think? Is there enough here to have any hope for the show, or is this thing fucked? Let me know below. I know this is way past the trailer dropping, but this thing keeps popping up in the headlines every day because of all the controversy around it, so thought maybe I'm not too late and I'll make a video about it. Use your willpower to hit that like and subscribe button and overcome your great fear to leave a comment. And if you'd like to join the Annoyed Nerd Corps, hit that join button as well. Until next time, always remember, Guy Gardner is the greatest of the Green Lanterns. See ya.